Welcome, Coleman's 2015 Certified SBA 7A Loan Closer Training Office Hours, Week 1. Lance Sexton, Coleman Faculty Instructor, former Little Rock SBA District Director.
Deputy Director.
Deputy. Yeah. I give up. You were with SBA. You were just.
Yeah, I was with SBA. That's correct.
Welcome all. For those of you who are new, let's go through the house rules. We love questions. Lance loves questions. Lance, you're still getting questions from students from the very first closing training we did last year, aren't you?
That's right, Bob. We first did the loan closer certification course back in August of last year, I think it was.
It's still good.
And people who participated in that session are still sending questions to me. And guess what, Bob? I'm still answering.
Still answering. So we didn't tell you the benefit, but free question answering for life.
That seems like the way it is. But, Bob, I love to answer questions. And, you know, it's important for me that all the people participating in this training have the help they need to be good SBA loan closers. So
ask your questions during the week. Send it to Lance at ColemanReport.com, and he will get it to you. We'll save them. We have a couple questions here we will go over. And you can ask during this live session. You can use the chat box interface on the GoToWebinar dashboard. Click on that, and we will get the question. Or send it to Joseph at ColemanReport.com. He's monitoring his email, and he will pull that up. You notice there's a video section here. If you don't like how it's sized, click on, what is it, webcam? Webcam. Click on webcam, and you can size the video for your own preference. You can put us at the top, bottom, left, right, and you can even get rid of us. So you control that part of the presentation. We do record all the office hours. If for some reason you can't make it, it's in Litmos. You can click on that and watch it back at your convenience. And again, we encourage you to participate in this. Even if you don't get all the work done for the week, click on this and get caught up a little bit. We do like to do poll questions. Gives Lance a little bit better idea of the expertise in the audience. And let's go to the first question, Joseph. Does your bank have a formal SBA lending policy? These are anonymous questions. We do not do NSA-type data collection. We do not turn this over to the Inspector General. Yeah.
Bob, my experience with this is not all SBA lending banks actually have an SBA lending policy. Well, I guess they got to meet Grace there.
That's Gracie. That's Lance, you're not following the script. That's later on in the script. Lance?
But not all banks have an SBA lending policy.
We are preaching to the choir today. 100% have a specific SBA lending policy.
That's great.
Question number 2. What is the average size of your typical SBA loan requests?
And I think this one, Bob, is just to give me an idea of what types of closings our participants are involved in and the general size range.
We're all over the board, which is good. Let's see, we got 23% under 350, 62% under between 350 and 1 million. And math. And Lance, if you've done the math, that leaves us with 15% over $1 million. I'm surprised at the 15%. That's a high number.
Yeah. Well, I mean, in terms of closing SBA loans, Bob, it seems that there is kind of a tendency for banks to eventually get into the larger loans because when you're selling them on the secondary market, the premium income can be incredible.
There's a number of banks who that is their model. They go after those larger loans. Their average loan size is $1.1, $1.2 million.
I'm looking at a 400 loan portfolio right now where they sold the guaranteed portion of every loan, and they also sold as much of the unguaranteed portion of the loan as they could. So it's becoming more and more common.
Well, since you mentioned that, I can say that while we were looking at this question, are you an SB Express lender? The market is coming back for that unguaranteed portion of the loan, and you're going to see more and more of those types of transactions in today's environment. This is a simple one, and this is a simple answer. It's 2/3, 1/3. 2/3 yes, 1/3 no.
Yeah, and Bob, this is something, the reason I asked the question is just to get an opportunity to gauge what our audience is like, but more importantly, to encourage that 1/3 that's not doing express lending to take a look at it, because it is an excellent SBA program. And one of the complaints from borrowers about SBA loans sometimes is the amount of time and documentation that it requires. The SBA Express program is the way for you to deliver a loan of $350,000 or less using a lot of your bank forms, a minimal number of SBA forms, and I've actually worked with a bank, and we input an Express application. We created the authorization. They went from the point of inputting the application to closing the loan in 48 hours.
And a lot less underwriting requirements.
Absolutely.
I would encourage you, especially for a small loan program. I may not waive a lot of the underwriting requirements for a $300,000 loan, but if I want to look at a $30,000 SBA Express loan, you can do some creative things in that arena. Absolutely.
Well, and it's an excellent way for banks to get working capital out to their small business owners. You may have a 7A loan on the commercial real estate and equipment, but you really didn't want to do the working capital piece. Well, the Express loan is a great way to do those working capital loans.
For the lenders who are over $1 million, absolutely. Do your 25-year 7A real estate loans, and then come in with an Express loan, $50,000, $100,000 working capital. Are you a POP lender?
And I think this is a great question, Bob. You know how, Bob, all the questions we get from the closing classes, a lot of them come down to, if you are a PLP lender and you have an SBA loan opportunity, and there's some gray areas, sometimes we recommend they process those as GP loans to make sure and get SBA's concurrence with how the loan is packaged. But PLP lenders are like Express lenders. It allows you to deliver an SBA product quicker. You're doing your own approvals, and it's an excellent way to provide great service to your borrowers as an SBA lender.
I don't think we've ever had 94% of the audience vote. We have 94% of the vote in, and 82% are PLP lenders.
Wow, that's great.
And I assume the other 18%, you'll be able to answer yes in the next year or so.
And too, Bob, the PLP lenders, there's absolutely no reason why you don't go ahead and sign up and become an Express lender.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you keep an electronic copy of the SBA SOP 5010-5H on your desktop? Why are you asking this, Lance? Just that sort of.
Well, I think that anybody that's working in the SBA arena that's closing SBA loans, keeping a copy of the 5010-5H handy on your desktop is a great thing to do, and you will get a copy of the 5010-5H in the reading materials. So you can go to SBA's website and download it, or just look through the reading materials and save it to your desktop.
No, I have a copy on mine. I'm sure you do, and 88% of the class does as well. So for you,
good deal.
For you, 13%. That doesn't add up. 88 and 13. So for the 12.5%, we recommend you do that. Tell me about week 1.
Well, we're going to talk about the importance of the loan closer. We're going to define what a prudent lender is, and anybody that's worked with SBA and realizes that SBA is putting more and more of the underwriting, closing, and servicing decisions off on a prudent lender. That's the reason we have the unilateral authority matrix for servicing, but the same thing's true in underwriting and closing the SBA loan. So understanding what a prudent lender is very important. We're going to talk about the differences in processing and closing a loan under 350 and over 350, and we'll touch base with those important eligibility issues. When you look at SBA's reasons for repair and denial, most of the reasons that are related to denial of the SBA guarantee occur during the closing process because of eligibility issues. So it's a very important topic to pay close attention to in this training.
Absolutely, absolutely. By the way, I forgot to mention asking questions. In the chat box, you can raise your hand, and we can bring you on live, and you can ask the question to Lance. We haven't had that. No one's,
and we want that.
No one's done that yet. Uh-oh, what I did. Am I still on? Am I still on? What's going on, Joseph? Can you hear me okay, Lance?
Yeah, we can.
Yes, I can.
All right. I got weird stuff popping up on my screen. I apologize. Let's go to the email questions. Email question number 1. Question about express line of credit. Does SBA require that a plan to pay off a line of credit by the end of a guarantee period be contained in the loan file? I wasn't sure if proof that the loan would pay out by the end of the guarantee period was just for non-revolving lines or if that included revolving lines as well.
Well, on the revolving lines of credit, typically it's good to have that. It's prudent to have a plan for that. But in reality, Bob, most of the revolving lines of credit end up getting termed out at some point. But I think as a prudent lender, you would have a plan for them to repay the revolving line of credit during the term of the loan, realizing that in probably 95% of the cases, Bob, it doesn't happen, and you end up terming the loan out.
Lance, if I term it out, do I still have that guarantee, or have I lost it at that point in time?
Within SBA's guidelines, you can term it out. SBA has some rules related to allowing the borrower to repay the loan. So you can term it out, and you can keep the SBA guarantee.
Use of proceeds question. It seems that working capital can be used as a catch-all for anything that isn't detailed in the authorization and the use of proceeds section. Are there any details about this that you have to be careful, or can you make sure you document?
Well, working capital is kind of a catch-all category. However, it is important that you pay attention to some extent what they're using the working capital for, making sure that it's not contrary to the use of proceeds that's listed in the loan authorization. The other thing you want to be careful about is dispersing working capital for things that might not be eligible on an SBA loan. You have to go back to the 50-10 use of proceeds, and we cover that in this training, what's a eligible use of proceed, but there are ineligible use of proceeds, and an example of that, Bob, would be paying past due taxes.
Or can I take 20 grand out and go to the Bahamas?
Absolutely. That's so. I mean, I think that working capital in most situations is dispersed, but I think you want to pay attention and make sure that it's being used for an eligible business purpose.
Lance, we had a case study just an hour ago in our underwriting training that we had a $2.5 million package buying a building, and we have $100,000 for leasehold improvements. In this particular case study, they're rocket scientists, they're tinkerers, they're selling to NASA, they have sophisticated equipment, and we had a discussion on whether we could take that $100,000 for leasehold improvements, put that into working capital, and waive, not require all the construction requirements. And the answer was it was immaterial. We don't think that that would sink the loan, and we've disclosed in the credit memo that we're doing this, but we're not going to go through the normal construction protocols. And I think that's a perfect example of how to handle a working capital allocation, as opposed to just saying $200,000, they can do what they want.
Right.
Question number 3. I apologize. Question number 2. And you expect me to read this, Joseph? I can't read it. It's too small. I'll read it off my notes. We requested a transcript from the IRS for a 2011 tax return, but the results came back as no filing. We had a copy of the customer's return and requested the office to clarify. The borrower went to one of the IRS offices and got a stamped copy of the return, and the officer wanted to use this one as the transcript copy. He stated this is the way they would handle the situation at his previous bank if there was no information from the 4506. I do not see any information in the FCP that stated we can substitute a stamped copy for a transcript. In the end, I requested that another request to the IRS be submitted. Can you clarify?
Well, the 450610, the transcripts are a very important thing for a closer to pay attention to. Make sure the 4506T sent off, get the transcripts. There will be occasions where the response from the IRS will indicate that no tax return exists. Now, you have to look at this from two sides, Bob. From a liquidation side, if you have a stamped copy from the IRS, quite often that will work as a workaround on the purchase demand kit. On the underwriting and closing side, you're going to want to send that stamped copy to the National Guarantee Processing Center at 7A Loan Mod at SBA.gov and get it approved by SBA. Now, in my time at SBA, my belief is they will approve a stamped copy of the tax return. You just need to be persistent. I actually worked with a bank on a situation like this, and we had to, the initial response from SBA was not positive, but we appealed the response to the deputy director, and he ended up approving.
Also, I remember from the depths of my SOP reading, if you get 3 responses, and let's assume 2 are correct and 1 is incorrect, and it's off by X amount of dollars, you are allowed to close that loan if it appears everything else is the same. In other words, IRS does sometimes do fat finger inputting, and let's say you're off $10,000, note it.
You just memo the file and move on.
But you don't have to solve that of a problem. But I agree, if you're missing the tax return, unfortunately, you've got to do something with it. But I agree, I think the stamped copy is fine. Is that it for questions, Joseph?
We actually have our hand raised.
We have a hand risen. All right. Let's see if we, now, pressure's on for you.
I have unmuted. Betsy, are you there?
Betsy, can you hear us?
Yes.
All right, Betsy.
This is great.
What's the question?
Can you hear us?
I can hear you fine. Good.
Okay, now you said regarding that you have to send the stamp IRS transcript to the SBA for approval, even if you're a PLP lender?
If you're a PLP lender, the stamped transcript, no, you're not going to send it to the 7A Loan Mod Center. You're going to take the stamped transcript, write a memo and file explaining it, attach it to it, and go ahead and move forward.
Correct. That's what we do at this time. All right, thank you.
Thank you, Betsy. All right.
Oh, thank you for the question. Yeah.
Anybody else want to raise their hand? Let's play Stump Lance. Let's give him a question he doesn't know the answer to. All right. Well, anything else? Are we clear? Oh, I apologize. Week 2. Give us a preview.
Week 2, we're going to talk about the SBA loan authorization, which may be one of the most important documents in your SBA loan file because it explains all of the critical issues that you need to pay attention to as a loan closer. So we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about the SBA Loan Wizard, the credit memo. Very importantly, we're going to talk about how to get changes made to the SBA loan authorization. You know, I would venture a great poll question for next week would be, have you ever had an SBA loan that closed exactly as the original authorization said? Because most SBA loans do have changes to the authorization, so we're going to discuss how you take care of that. And it's critically important if something material changes that you get that approved by SBA. And we're also going to talk about those eligible and ineligible uses of proceeds on an SBA loan. So it's going to be a very important week in this training.
My takeaway for the closer is make sure 3 things match. The credit memo, the loan authorization, and I'm blanking on the third one.
Well,
the authorization, the credit memo, and the anyway. Make sure everything.
Probably.
Oh, the 1920.
The 1920, the credit memo, and the authorization. And there are other topics that are critically important that we discuss as we continue through this, like the 4506T, matching up the use of proceeds. So it's a great week and a very important week in this certified loan closer training.
Oh, and I read all these Inspector General reports, and they love to point out that the credit memo does not match the loan authorization, and they just are dripping with sarcasm to the lender because they can't even get something that simple right. So
well, and I do a significant level of file review for banks throughout the country, Bob, and that's a very common exception that I find is the credit memo and the authorization don't really match up.
And they need to, and it just makes it. Well, very good. Any other questions, Joseph? we're clear. Hey, thank you all very much. Thank you for joining office hours. Enjoy week 2. We'll talk to you next Friday. Thank you.
See you next Friday. Thank you.